High on Mount Olympus, a new age was dawning. The monstrous titans who had ruled the cosmos through brute force and even devoured their own children were finally defeated, cast into the eternal darkness of Tartarus. Fresh from his victory, Zeus stood as the undisputed king of the gods, his reign secured by lightning and sheer might. The age of chaos was over. A new era of order had begun. But whispers of the past don't just fade away. On the throne of the universe, victory is never final. The very same prophecy that drove his father to madness now echoed in the gilded halls of Olympus. Only this time it wasn't a warning, it was a promise. A promise that Zeus, the savior, would become the very monster he'd fought to destroy. To secure a throne, a king must be willing to do anything. To keep power, you have to become a monster. And Zeus was a willing student. With the Titan War won, Zeus got down to business, dividing the spoils. He claimed the heavens and the earth as his domain. He gave the seas to his brother Poseidon and the unseen underworld to his elder brother Hades. Feasts were held on Olympus. Ambrosia and nectar flowed like rivers. On the surface, it looked like a golden age, a masterclass in building a new world order. The Olympians were young, beautiful, and powerful, and their king was the most powerful of them all. That crown sat heavy on Zeus's head. He'd seen firsthand what the lust for power does. He had freed his siblings from his father's stomach only to wage a 10-year war that ripped the cosmos apart. He knew thrones weren't kept by peace but by control. And, as Hesiod tells it in his Theogony, the new king was soon visited by the ghosts of the old world. Gaia and Uranus, earth and sky, his own grandparents, came to him with a prophecy. Just as Cronus had overthrown his father, and just as Zeus had overthrown his, so too would Zeus be overthrown by his own son. The cycle of patricide, the foundational sin of their divine family, wasn't over. It was just waiting for him. And the mother of this prophesied son was the wisest of all goddesses, Zeus's first wife, the Titaness Metis. Metis was not just any Titaness. Her name meant cunning wisdom. She was the embodiment of brilliant strategy and profound knowledge, the wisest of all gods and mortals. She had been Zeus's greatest ally in the war, the architect of the plan to trick Cronus into regurgitating his devoured children. She was his first wife, his most trusted counselor, the mind behind his might. And according to the prophecy, she was now pregnant with his doom. Zeus was faced with a choice: trust in the woman he loved or surrender to the paranoia consuming him. For the king of the gods, it was no choice at all. He looked at Metis, and he no longer saw his brilliant partner. He saw a vessel for his own destruction. Modern psychological analyses frame this moment as the turning point, where Zeus stops being a liberator and becomes a tyrant in the mold of his father. He wouldn't just kill his child. He would erase the very possibility of its existence. He approached Metis not with a weapon, but with honeyed words. In some versions, he challenged her to a playful game of shape-shifting. Could she turn into a lion, a serpent, a drop of water, a fly? As she transformed into the tiniest of creatures, Zeus saw his chance. He opened his mouth and swallowed her whole. This wasn't just murder, it was an act of complete and total assimilation. Zeus didn't just eliminate a threat, he consumed her power. He put her into his own belly so that, as Hesiod writes, the goddess might advise him on good and evil. He stole her wisdom, making it his own, ensuring no one could ever use it against him. It was a horrific, intimate act of betrayal, the first purge of his new reign. He had become his father, devouring his own family to protect his throne. The cycle hadn't been broken. It had just found a new champion. Zeus believed the problem was solved. Metis was gone, and with her, the prophesied son. But he'd overlooked one tiny, crucial detail. Metis was already pregnant when he swallowed her. The child, a daughter, was still growing, now gestating not in a womb, but in the mind of a god. Soon, Zeus was slammed by a headache of cosmic proportions. It was a splitting, agonizing pain that no god could soothe. It felt as if his skull was about to burst from the inside out. In his madness, he bellowed for Hephaestus, the smith god, commanding him to take his axe and split his head open. With a single mighty blow, Hephaestus complied. And from the cleaved skull of Zeus, a figure emerged, fully grown and armed for war. She wore gleaming armor, a spear in her hand, and let out a battle cry that shook the heavens. This was no helpless infant. This was Athena, the goddess of wisdom, warfare, and strategy. She was the daughter prophesied to be as wise as her mother, born directly from the mind of her father. In this gruesome act, Zeus had sidestepped the prophecy. By birthing the child himself, he made her an extension of his own will, not a rival. Athena would become his most loyal and formidable child, a living weapon and a walking reminder of the day he consumed her mother. He had turned his greatest fear into his greatest asset, but the monstrosity of the act showcased the terrifying lengths he would go to maintain control. With the prophecy seemingly dealt with, Zeus turned his attention to his next project, solidifying his dynasty. For that, he needed a queen. His eyes fell upon his sister, Hera, the goddess of marriage and family. But Hera, having witnessed his ambition and ruthlessness, wanted nothing to do with him. So Zeus resorted to the tool he was quickly perfecting, deception. Knowing Hera had a fondness for animals, he transformed himself into a small, disheveled cuckoo caught in a storm. He flew to her, appearing weak and helpless. Taking pity on the small creature, Hera held it to her breast to warm it. At that moment, Zeus transformed back into his true form and, using his power and her compromised position, forced her into marriage. This union was not one of love, but of conquest. It was a political merger designed to legitimize his reign with a proper queen, but it was built on a foundation of violence and lies. As modern retellings like Jennifer Saint's Hera explore, this act ignited an eternal conflict. Hera, forever scorned and humiliated, would channel her rage not at her all-powerful husband, but at his lovers and illegitimate children. Their marriage became a toxic, hate-filled battleground that would spill out across the mortal and divine worlds for millennia, a direct consequence of Zeus's belief that even love must be taken by force. But Zeus's paranoia didn't stop with his family. It extended to anyone who could challenge his absolute authority. Among his greatest allies in the war against the Titans was Prometheus, whose name means forethought. Yet Prometheus had a flaw in Zeus's eyes. He loved humanity. He saw mortals shivering in the dark, weak and at the mercy of the gods. So in an act of profound compassion, Prometheus stole fire from Olympus and gave it to mankind. With fire came knowledge, civilization, and the power to forge their own destiny. They were no longer entirely dependent on the gods. To Zeus, this wasn't a gift, it was treason. Empowering humanity was the same as weakening the gods. It created an independent power base he couldn't control. As Aeschylus wrote in Prometheus Bound, there is a sickness among tyrants. They cannot trust their friends. And for this act of friendship toward mortals, Zeus's punishment was merciless. He had Prometheus dragged to the Caucasus Mountains and chained to a rock for eternity. Every day, an eagle, Zeus's own messenger, would fly down and feast on Prometheus's liver. And every night, the liver would grow back, forcing the Titan to endure the agony anew, day after day. It was a display of sheer brutal power, a message to any who might dare to defy him. He tortured his former friend to enforce his divine monopoly on power. But torturing Prometheus wasn't enough. Zeus's rage demanded that humanity, the recipients of the stolen fire, also suffer. His revenge would be ingenious, devastating, and permanent. He commanded Hephaestus to craft a new being from clay. Athena dressed her in beautiful robes, and Aphrodite gave her the sting of desire. Hermes, the trickster god, gifted her a cunning, deceitful heart. They called her Pandora, meaning all gifted. She was presented to humanity not as a punishment, but as a peace offering. She was, in essence, a biological weapon disguised as a bride. With her, she carried a sealed jar, often mistranslated as a box, and she was warned never to open it. But Zeus had designed her to be curious. He knew she wouldn't be able to resist, and one day she opened it. From the jar flew not treasures, but every evil imaginable: sickness, death, sorrow, strife, and endless suffering. They swarmed out across the earth, infecting the world of mortals forever. Pandora slammed the lid shut, but it was too late. Only one thing remained trapped inside: hope. This was Zeus's final cruel joke. Through an act of profound misogyny, he used a woman as the delivery mechanism for the world's pain. As feminist retellings point out, this myth has been used for centuries to blame women for the world's suffering. Zeus hadn't just punished his enemies, he had poisoned the very future of humanity, ensuring they would forever be too busy suffering to ever challenge the heavens again. The story of Zeus's reign is a dark mirror, reflecting the corrupting nature of absolute power. If you want to continue exploring the complex and often brutal world of Greek mythology, make sure you're subscribed and have hit the notification bell so you don't miss what comes next. And drop a comment below. Was Zeus a necessary evil or just a flat-out monster? In the end, the savior became the tyrant, the liberator became the jailer. The son who fought to end his father's monstrous reign ended up replicating his sins with chilling precision. He consumed his wife to steal her wisdom. He mutilated his own body to control his offspring. He built a marriage on deceit and violence. He tortured the friend who helped secure his victory and unleashed a plague of horrors upon the world, all to silence the echo of a prophecy. He secured his throne not through justice, but through fear. He ruled not as a wise father, but as a paranoid dictator who saw rivals in his children, his allies, and even in the fledgling race of mortals below. The paranoia of power had taken hold, and the age of Zeus, born from a heroic rebellion, would be defined by the endless cycle of conflict his own fear had created. The monster was on the throne, and his story was only just beginning.